Okay, so we are thinking of words like the ideal solution, and I was talking previously about solution implies, for many people, some kind of a problem or a challenge. Um, in chemistry, solution means we got one thing that's floating in another thing, or that's dissolved in another thing. Then you got a solution. It's a mix of two things. So even the word solution has multiple ways of being used that are meaningful. But we're using the term solution here, like the ideal solution, like um, a outcome or a method or result that's really favorable or valuable to a particular person in a particular context. It's ideal in some way. So that's probably stuff you guys already are pretty clear on, but I now want to jump into this contrast between ideals and idealism, and what do these two words mean, and how are they different? So I have some notes that I made previously that I could find and use, but I wanted to just invite the three other people who are listening to see who might be willing to share and make a comment on an example of an ideal, an example of idealism, or a general definition, just anything you want to say to contrast those two words. Who would like to start?
I will start. I think that ideals can be, I go back to your 10 steps of perfectionism or 9 steps of perfectionism. Ideals clearly can find themselves in heaven for the most part. I forgot the 3 different terms, but then the hell terms I remember very distinctly. Cynic. No, I just forgot them now. But anyway, usually idealism.
Daniel?
Yes.
Your audio is going in and up and down really inconsistently, so I don't know if you're walking with like a microphone dangling by your mouth, but that's what I imagine, that like you've got it plugged into your ear,
Yeah.
Yeah? So see if you can hold it close to your mouth so we get a constant volume. As far as the references you were just making, that we talked about the 8 stages of perfectionism in another recording, and then the 9th stage of the perfect one, or the perfect ones. So the first 3 stages were champion, fan, and fanatic. The next 3 were skeptic, critic, and cynic, with a reformer kind of critic. And then we had a couple other stages there. Comic was the 8th stage, and stoic was the 7th stage. So that's the reference you were just making. You can continue with that, or kind of go back to the general thing of ideals versus idealism. Go ahead.
Well, I think that applies to ideals versus idealism, because idealism, a lot of times we find ourselves in the range of hell, or the cynic, or the critic, or the you're agonizing. Idealism implies that you want to change ideals. You want to change either somebody else's ideals or your own. Right, where ideals can simply just be where what you value and where you want to put attention towards, and is much less about criticizing or condemning anything, as opposed to idealism, which has a lot to do with criticism and condemnation. But maybe those are I'm generalizing big time, I guess, but that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Any comments on what Daniel said?
That's kind of what I was thinking as well, is that the ideals are just, I guess, values that you have personally that you may find important or prioritizing or anything like that. And idealism, I feel like, tends to be like, this is the way it should be for me and for everyone else. Ideals are just values that you hold close to you, that you're willing to change, or you're willing to edit, or you're willing to reprioritize based on experiences or curiosities that you seek, or you just happen to find or experience. But idealism, I feel, is something that you protect, that you don't want to hear any disruption to that, or any criticism of that, or any conflict to it.
Okay. Anything? Okay. Thank you, Shelley and Daniel. So when we talk about an ideal solution or the ideal solution, well, it depends on the situation or the problem, and then also what we see, what we value as far as a resolution to it. Do we want simplicity? Do we want economy, like something inexpensive? Do we want something fast? Do we want all of those? Those are all different ideals, and people can realize that multiple ideals can be, important at the same time. So we don't normally, we might pick one solution that's ideal, but there's a variety of ideals that can play into it, into how we establish which solution is ideal. So my sequence here is a little rough because I was speaking spontaneously, and I now went back and got my notes. So I'm going to give my definitions that I had previously written of ideal and idealism, and you guys won't be surprised to know that they're really similar to what you already have said. In fact, they're largely redundant. We could skip it, but I think I'll go through it and just say them real fast in a minute anyway. But the ideal solution, to me, implies one that is clearly distinct or contrasting with other possible solutions. If it's not way better, then it's not the ideal. Or we could say, well, there's a bunch of ideal solutions. Any of them will do. Let's move on it. We're ready. We've got something good enough to take action. If it's not good enough to take action, then that's clearly not the ideal solution. Or we haven't identified yet whether it is or not the ideal solution. But once it's established as that's good enough, then if it's ideal, it must at least be good enough. If it's not at least good enough, then it can't be ideal. And this is somewhat abstract, playing with words, all that. And we know that that's part of what we're involved here with, and that's we're looking, in fact, at how can we play with words and how can we communicate in ways that we're going to, this is the case for me, how can I be more focused on what works for me, what I value, how can I quickly arrive at the ideal solution for myself or support someone else and whatever solution's ideal for them, or if it's a group of people or a business or a household, what's ideal for the collective in the case of a family or a particular office or location or site of a particular multinational corporation. Well, at this location, what do we need to be considerate of that's different maybe from the general rules for that whole company? Because this location is in a place where power outages are frequent, and so we need to be more sensitive to having a backup power supply or whatever the variations are. So the ideal solution. To choose the ideal solution is simple. That's the slogan that I've created as of right now. My working slogan is, to choose the ideal solution is simple. And that implies if a solution is not simple to choose or to identify as ideal, then that's not the ideal solution. So that's like, simplicity is implicit in all of this conversation. Even though we're going to say some things that might be a little, trivial or detailed or complex, the point is to contrast complexity with simplicity. The ideal solution is simple. To choose the ideal solution is also a simple process, because once I see that that's ideal, then of course I'm going to choose it. So who has comments on anything I just said?
Well, I find it interesting that, yes, the ideal solution can change on a dime, actually, whereas idealism it might have change over time, but it tends to be a lot more static, a lot more, stuck in the mud or whatever.
Personal. It's like a lot more personal.
Emotional, stuff like that. Whereas ideals might be more logical and a lot less emotional, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, got it. That's what you meant too by personal, right, Shelley?
Yes.
Yeah, I got how that all fits. Go ahead. Anything more, Daniel?
No, that was all.
Okay, Shelley?
Nothing more.
Okay, my wife says no. Okay, so you guys gave, some contrasting comments on ideals and idealism. I think I already had said an example of an ideal would be an outcome that I value is security, or an outcome that I value is popularity or familiarity. These are all just ideals, so there can be lots of them. Idealism, my example of that is I should not need to change my blank. My goals, I shouldn't need to ever change my goals. I shouldn't ever need to change my methods. I shouldn't ever need to change my marketing. I shouldn't ever need to change my diet. Just because I'm pregnant, you guys, why should I change my diet just because I'm pregnant? I shouldn't have to. So that's an example of idealism, and obviously, we can make fun of some of these kind of extreme cases where it's odd, but we do practice idealism, or we have practiced idealism, meaning this resistance to change, this resistance to too much new information. So if there's too much new information for a particular person in a particular moment, they can be overwhelmed, they can be annoyed, they can want to withdraw, they can want to slow things down, or I'm done with this, to heck with this, I'm out of here, withdrawal, all those kind of range of things. So idealism, any comment yet? So idealism would be I shouldn't need to change my life, ultimately. Other people should change to fit me. Oh, yeah. Other people should change to fit us. Oh, yeah. Of course. Oh, come on. Of course. But I shouldn't need to change. In fact, I don't need to change my strategies, my goals, my assumptions, my favorite author. Look, who's my favorite author? J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know if that's my favorite author, but let's go with J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and various other books. So let's say that's my favorite author, and I say, look, I don't need to read any other authors. I have my favorite already. I shouldn't need to change my favorite author just because George Lucas, or, am I saying the right name? Is that the Star Wars guy?
Yes.
Okay. Just because, I really liked all 8 of George Lucas's last, books and movies and blah 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 blah. Well, I shouldn't have to change my favorite. So I get into these silly examples, and it is silly. But people do argue I shouldn't have to change my opinions about the environment, about immigration, about marriage, about divorce, about war, about healthcare plans in the United States, right? So I'm taking a lot of U.S. political subjects, but I think a lot of these subjects are part of the mainstream media and other places too. But I shouldn't need to change my opinions. Ultimately, idealism is like I shouldn't need to change my personal perspective, my personal opinions, my personal behaviors. Ultimately, I shouldn't need to change. So I didn't actually know I was going to say that, but as I'm giving all these examples, I'm like, that's kind of obvious. So idealism, in its kind of diluted superstructure behind all of the forms of idealism, I shouldn't need to change. Can you get that fits?
Yes.
Yes.
So, do people change? Yes. Do people say I shouldn't need to change? Sometimes. Who here has said I shouldn't need to change? I have. I mean, maybe not like just I shouldn't need to change. I mean, I've said like, no, this shirt is not too dirty. I shouldn't need to change. Or
Yes, you do that.
my wife's like, yeah, he's always like, no, it's not too hot outside. I shouldn't need to, or whatever it is, like something related to clothing, or some really obvious use of the word change. I shouldn't need to change. I say that kind of stuff, and I don't even think about it, and I mean it. And it's not an idealism, of course, if I say I shouldn't need to change before I go take out the trash. I shouldn't need to change shirts. That's just, that's not idealism in that case. But there are cases where I have like kind of a background of insecurity, and I'm like, I shouldn't need to change my opinions. I already know about investing, or I already know about guitar playing. I shouldn't need to I shouldn't need to listen to a new album. Come on, I listened to a bunch of new albums in the 1970s and 1980s. I've listened to new albums before. Why should I listen to a new one? A new artist? A new instrument? A new style of music? A new genre? No, I already know. I shouldn't need to do anything new. So anyway, playing around with that. So who else? Anybody have a silly or real life example of I shouldn't need to change? One of the things that comes to mind for me is I shouldn't need to forgive. I shouldn't need to relax. I shouldn't need to stop condemning my past or somebody else. And I shouldn't need to change my position about, they are a blank person. What kind of person? The wrong kind. They're a bad, whatever, right? So if I have a position that my sister is a blah, 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 or my wife is a blah, blah, or my grandma is a snob, or she's a drug addict, or she's a Republican, or I don't know. That's not very... no, she's a stupid Republican, right? So if I say something like that, we're presuming that I'm speaking from idealism, unless I'm clearly joking. We would presume that somebody's talking from a mode of idealism. Comments or questions? So, my long definition of idealism I can give, certainly consistent with what we said before. I'll repeat ideal real quick. Ideal is simply, I'm using the word ideal as a noun here, not as adjective like ideal solution, but just an ideal, or the ideal of interest to me today is a point of reference for organizing action. An ideal is a point of reference for organizing action. Action could be speaking, talking, typing, texting, but some kind of activity. A point of reference for organizing activity, including a point of reference for evaluating a variety of methods based on how well the measured results of each method compare to some speculated ideal outcome or a specific standard for assessment. So if I think my ideal weight, if I'm 5'7", then my ideal weight should be between 120 and 180. That's my ideal weight right there. Got it? Now that's not very precise, but that's my ideal range. And if I'm outside of that range, I'm too heavy or too light. Anything in there is ideal. Or I could say ideal would be 157 to 159 or whatever, right? So it just means like a target. So if I try some diet and my ideal is to lose 2 pounds a week, and some diet, I lose 2 pounds a month, I might say, well, it's, my evaluation based on the ideal of 2 pounds a week is that this diet is in the right direction but insufficient. Any questions or comments?
I just know that I've never experienced idealism before, so
good.
I'm really learning a lot today.
Well, good, because that's one of the things that I've noticed is that people shouldn't ever need to experience idealism. They should just be really, really smart before they have to learn anything. People, my problem with humans is they're not already adults when they're born. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you might as well start as a perfect one. I mean, why go through all those different stages? I mean, how foolish is that,
Another thing that I really dislike is people who are insincere, pretentious, use irony, and are like hypocrites. Because hypocrites, you know what? There shouldn't be any. There shouldn't even be a word hypocrisy. So, my ideal is to not have fun too much. Because if you have fun too much, that's a problem, right? Other people will get jealous.
Yes, you have to throw in a little bit of misery in there just to keep everybody honest. You know what I mean?
Because if people aren't honest, then...
I don't know.
Oh, okay. You know what? People should be honest, though. They should be honest with themselves and with each other. Especially 2-year-olds. When I ask the 2-year-old, do you want any more sandwich? And they say no. And then 5 minutes later, you know what they say to me? Yes. Can I have some more sandwich? They're not honest. All right. Any questions? All right. So idealism I defined as a noun. Wow, that's a surprise so far. I feel like this conversation is going to just get ridiculous eventually, but be patient because it's going to take some time before it gets ridiculous. I'm going to take some time before I get patient because I don't want to rush into it. Okay. Idealism is a pattern of linguistic activity in which a pre-existing set of familiar conceptual ideals, which are the right ones, of course, a pre-existing set of familiar conceptual ideals is identified as fundamentally more relevant than all other ideals forever. And then, that pre-existing set of familiar conceptual ideals is used to harshly criticize and condemn any realities that do not conform to the exclusive set of ideals that are being worshipped as sacred. In fact, not only do I condemn or criticize in the mode of idealism anything that doesn't conform to my holy ideals, I condemn things that might not conform. I look for things that might not conform. I go out of my way to find things that might not conform, and then I say, I accuse them of not conforming. Right? That's normal in idealism. So, this pattern of activity, called idealism, is typically characterized by sincerity, number one, anxiety, antagonism, argumentativeness, stress, perfectionism, blame, frustration. I'm just reading through a list. This should be really exciting. But when people are idealistic, they do these kind of things. They have these kind of experiences and outcomes. And there's a general experience of desperation for social validation. There's a general tendency to dismiss alternative interpretations because they're unfamiliar, because they're alternative, because they're not the one that I've pre-existingly defined as the only right one. Another tendency of idealists would be to ridicule any skepticism or perceived lack of enthusiasm for the worshipped ideals. What? You question? You question my accusation that the 2-year-old is unjust and immature and psychiatrically deficient because they wanted a sandwich 5 minutes after they had previously said they didn't want a sandwich? I find that insulting because I'm an idealist. Or if I'm an idealist, then I probably would find that assaulting. Or insulting. Or assaulting. So, the paranoia or panic of idealists is like a common thing. There's this background of paranoia. The edge of panic. About what? About alternative interpretations, which might be deemed by someone to reveal my own past imprecisions, because I've never made any mistakes myself. Anything that I think of as potentially revealing past imprecisions, past disappointments, past frustrations, past guilt, past grief, past anger. If I shouldn't have been angry, then anybody that ever saw me angry, they don't really know me because I'm not an angry person. Because I shouldn't be angry because they saw me being angry, they don't really know me because I'm not an angry person. So I reject them. I withdraw from them. I condemn them. Or whatever. Like, these are the kind of things that idealists, not me personally, but other idealists might do. My closing comment on idealism is see also idolatry. So we get that there's an overlap between the way I've talked about idealism and idolatry and, worship of particular ideals or worship of a symbol. It could be a painting, whatever. Idolatry is a pretty big word, but I did think to bring that in. It's related. This book and this translation of this book, that's the right one. Which one? The Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but it's the right one. It's the English translation because Sanskrit isn't a real sacred language. English translation by Swami Muktananda. This is the real deal. All those other deals, they're not real deals. Those are fake deals. This is a real deal. I'm thumping it right now. What am I thumping? The real Gita. Not the, what's the other one? Is there other Gitas? I don't even know if there are other Gitas. I don't know if there's other scriptures. Because I've got the right one. It's on my desk right here under my finger. I'm thumping it right now. Okay, I'm lying. You guys can't see. In fact, I don't even have a book on my desk. I was just making that up. All right, comments or questions?
I think what you're pointing out is the extremes between ideals and idealism. But what I find in my experience, with myself and others around me, most people, I might even say everybody, has some level of idealism. It can be, it's a spectrum. Right now you're just going over the two different extremes, but there's certainly a spectrum, and I think most people, let's put it that way, at least in my experience, have some level of idealism. Would you say that's a pretty fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That not only do people go through, not only can we observe spectrums of idealism amongst other people, but basically, like even the idealism that I notice in other people is going to be relative to me and my interests. I'm not even going to notice certain kinds of idealism much. If I'm aware of something for myself, then I'm going to see it in other people a lot. That's part of the learning process. And even as we're, rejecting other people, if my idealism is that I'm not angry, then I go out of my way not only to distance myself from people who saw me angry previously, but to avoid situations that might bring anger, or avoid people who are angry because they piss me off, and I'm not an angry person though. As long as I just avoid them, then I can, avoid anger. If people are really silly, and I don't want to be silly, then then it makes sense that I would avoid those people. As soon as I find out these are silly people, or as soon as I find out those are angry people, then I vilify them or avoid them or withdraw from them or all of the above. So, at some point, we can maybe even stop talking about idealism and just talk about here's my ideals, and here's my experience, and here's my perception, here's my presumption. And until I'm interested in ideals and identifying them and comparing them, until I'm interested in all ideals, then we would presume that I'm operating from idealism. So once I start to really be open to any ideal, that's kind of like the signal that I'm at least emerging from the whole realm of idealism, hypothetically. Comments? Questions? So, examples. Who has another example they want to... Anybody you want to, make fun of, such as your own self? Or me? My wife maybe will make fun of me. Huh? No, she's not even going to make fun of me. Go ahead. Who else?
Well, I just think that money clearly has nothing to do with happiness. It has nothing to do with ideals. Obviously, money is just unnecessary.
It's unnecessary. I think it's a problem that it exists, and we need to find a solution to, a stable value system and a just kind of money system. And also, I was hoping that Daniel was going to make fun of me because, he has done that in the past, but I feel like he's got me up on this big pedestal where he's like afraid to actually, say something that I might dislike. So, Shelley, anything for you? Maybe you're willing to make fun of me?
I'm going to say that I think people who don't believe in gay marriage are bigots. and they're all going to hell. They're so unfair, and I never want to be friends with them ever.
Daniel, you know that was about you, right?
Well, yes, Amy does have a penis, so I'm glad we're talking about that.
Amy's going to be really surprised to hear that.
Well, I mean, how is that about me? I mean,
No, that was totally about me. I thought you knew that it was about me. I was just joking. Go ahead.
Let's get serious. Quit joking around now.
Okay, sorry. I apologize. So, I noticed that the people that I had invited to the call, Sue Perskeptic, didn't make it today, and Apollo Jies, I thought he was going to be here, and I know there was somebody else that I invited that didn't make it. Hugh Morris? Yeah. All right. You guys were supposed to get those inside joke references and laugh or comment or something. Do you know even what I'm talking about?
How about Hugh Jass? Did you invite him?
Hugh Jass. Yeah, Hugh Jass. Hugh Jass. Wait, I thought you were on the call, Daniel. Oh.
Whatever.
So you walked right into that one, Daniel. That's why you should be stoic and just spectate.
Yeah, that's probably more my role, isn't it?
So we've resolved through, a sequence of scientific tests that gay marriage is what everybody should support. And huge asses are okay if if you're like a donkey breeder, then you should get some huge asses, You should go out of your way to get, they're stronger. Those kind of asses, I don't mean a jackass, I'm talking about a donkey. All right. So, yeah. Okay. What do I say now?
How about something funny for once?
Something funny. Well, I want to thank you guys. This isn't very funny. I want to thank you guys for helping me get to this point where I no longer am experiencing any ideals. I'm just in the pinnacle of idealism, where I've got idealism mastered, and I don't need any ideals now. Go ahead.
Sounds brilliant.
It does sound brilliant. So what was the joke you made earlier, Daniel? Before Shelley commented on marriage and so on. What were you talking about?
I'm a huge ass, so I don't remember.
No, that was after that. That was before that. No, before. Money. Oh yes, thank you, Shelley. Seriously, money. I wanted to talk about that though more. So money is, how should money be?
Readily available to all of us.
It should be in my wallet. Oh, wait. Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Readily available to all of us. That's right. It should be equally available to everyone, right?
Yes.
When I inherit money from my ancestors and stuff, and when I grew up in Florida, I should have an equal amount of money to the people in Rhode Island who are frickin' wealthy. I don't mean an equal amount to the people in, sub-Saharan Africa who make $2,000 a year. I'm talking about the people who make $2,000 a day. Come on. When I say equal, you guys do know by equal I mean equal to Michael Jordan. I think that's a good target for equality for me, right? Okay. Any other questions? What else do we have to say about money? I didn't really plan to sneak up on the topic of money, but now that we have, anybody want to comment on it?
I think that people who pursue money are clearly lost in idealism because, it becomes a lifelong, pursuit. So it's idealism. It couldn't be an ideal because it doesn't change over time. So if a Captain Ironic Moron was to speak, he might even say something like that.
Yeah. I had a friend once. I just wanted to tell you guys that. Oh wait, there was more. I had a friend once who, actually is still my friend. I admit it. So once I had a friend of mine, okay, damn it, my grammar police wife isn't even looking at me, but I can feel her eyes in the back of my head. And you're like, did you have eyes in the back of your head? Yeah, they're my wife's. Anyway, so once upon a time, I had a friend, and he had a check in his drawer of his desk. This is true. He had a check in the drawer of his desk from like 60 days prior. He had never taken it to the bank. So somebody wrote him a check, and it was, I don't remember if it was a $200 check or a $20 check, but for a business purpose, he had a check in his drawer, top drawer of his desk, and he hadn't cashed it. Now in his case, as I recall, it was piled under some other pieces of paper, so he didn't know it was there. But once we found it, he cashed it, of course. And then we talked about getting a refund from the tax agency, the IRS, that he had available for him for multiple years, actually. And I don't really want to get a lot into all of that necessarily, as far as who it was and the conversation. But it was interesting to me that he had other values that were more important to him than getting thousands of dollars from the IRS in 2 weeks. Like it'd take like only 2 weeks to do it, and he said that he was interested in money and financial, capacity. He had rent to pay, he had whatever, things in his life to use with money, or use money to get. But he was hesitant, skeptical, cynical. I don't know what words. I don't really care. But he over the course of weeks or months or however long it took, I had interactions with him, and he eventually sent off some paperwork to get some refunds. Got his refunds, spent the refund money, and I think every year since then has been more eager to file for refunds every February or every January or whatever, whenever he realized he had one available. He didn't wait a year or a month. He, was quick to get it. I assume you know who I'm talking about, by the way. No, my wife says she doesn't know. Cool. All right. So anybody want to comment on any of that? So we could say that idealism, so this is kind of the thing. It's really not my business, generally speaking, if other people's ideals are being used in the manner of idealism. So if he has an ideal about money or about the currency system or the government or the court system, or if anybody does, okay. My wife's ideals I might be interested in because, of the consequences for me of her actions and her perspective. My clients, my coworkers, my friends even, less so probably with friends, but everybody wants generally speaking, like I assume, people want their friends to do well, their friends to be happy, their friends to be around, right? So, anyway, comments or questions? So we've strayed from the topic of ideals versus idealism to joke around a bit. There's no particular ideal that is the one that once I find the right ideal, then it's always going to be the right one, and I'll always be, relaxed and saved from having to find any other ideals. That's one idea. So there's this idea that I'm going to get to a point of being saved where I never have to change, I never have to learn, I never have to adapt, and I never have to experience these challenges, frustrations, fear, blah, blah, blah. That may be hysterical, delirious, delusional, and so on. It may be that a more supreme faith would be, fear has its value, but, generally, I'd rather have security and safety and stability and predictability, at least in certain areas of my life. I'd rather predictability and consistency and stability over lots of surprises and lots of being startled and lots of being frightened and lots of being afraid or scared. So I can be open to fear, I can be open to grief, anger, confusion, challenge, learning, adaptation, etc. I can be open to the fact that the wind's going to change its direction and that I'm going to probably need to change my sails occasionally if I'm a sailor on a sailboat and I'm changing the, whether my sails are up or down or how the angle of my sail fits to the direction my boat's going. I can expect to make adjustments over time. There's no point at which I can expect to never need to make adjustments. Basically, until you fall asleep or you're dead or the living physical organism dies, that's basically when you don't need to make adjustments anymore, right? Other than that, there are going to be opportunities for adjustments. Questions or comments? Well, I'm glad that we have decided that idealism is the best way to have a solution to an ituation. And whatever the ituation is, one of the things that's important in ituations and solving ituations is to know what the ituation is. So I'm going to go ahead and conclude that recording about the ideal solution, ideals versus idealism. We covered ideals versus idealism and then some. And once I can stop the recording here.